right, it's 5 o'clock Central Europe time, and welcome to this new webinar. Thanks for taking the time to be here, attend here this webinar on FNC blocks. Just maybe a little confirmation if everything on the audio side is okay, if everyone is hearing it loud and clear. Just awaiting confirmation from your side. Okay, I hear that, or I see that the sound is good. So let's go ahead for this new webinar on FNC blocks. The mission for FNC blocks is to help you, the Delphi developer, to create feature-rich and flexible applications with diagrams, flowcharts, schematics, organigrams, all similar things like that. To do this with our FNC components. And the content for this webinar today, we have these topics coming up. First of all, we'll have a brief overview of what FNC blocks is and where it can be used, an overview of the components included in FNC blocks. We'll have a brief look at the architecture of FNC blocks, and we'll see how you can programmatically also interact with the FNC blocks components. And then we will present you an application that we created specifically for the webinar today, an application that shows you how you can create workflows and also execute these workflows with FNC blocks. To conclude with some tips and tricks, and all the attendees for the webinar today will receive the full source code of the workflow application that we create. And where can it? FNC blocks are a set of components to create, edit, and visualize diagrams, flowcharts, schematics, organigrams, etc. in a Delphi application. It consists of a control this, and of course, as show you or show with different types of blocks, there is also toolbars from where you can select the type to modify the properties, attributes, blocks. There's also a navigation panel in case the area where the blocks are is bigger than the area of the control. You can visually navigate in these controls. And in addition to this, we have toolbars also ready-made. Just drop on the form and use them, from where you can also change all the attributes of the different block controls. All the controls we show today, they work at the same time in a VCL application, in a FireMonkey application, also in a Lazarus created application with the LCL framework. And finally, they also work in a web client application created with TMS Web Core. And as such, you can target pretty much every operating system or operating system via a web interface with FNC blocks. So that includes obviously Windows, macOS, iOS, Android, Linux, and any modern browser. If you use the Lazarus IDE and use FNC blocks within this Lazarus IDE, you can also target the Raspberry Pi. But you could actually also target Raspberry Pi through Miletus, which is our technology to also create applications that run in a browser, but they are wrapped in a shell application and can also run on the Raspberry Pi. And that means that you can use FNC blocks, all components from the different IDEs. First and foremost, of course, the RadStudio IDE with the Delphi and C++ Builder personalities, but also from Lazarus and from Visual Studio Code, where you can run TMS Web Core from. This is the first overview of the controls that are included. There is the TMS FNC blocks control. So this is the control where you would drop all blocks, where you can visualize and manipulate these blocks. There is the TMS FNC block selector control, and this is, let's say, the tool palette equivalent for blocks that you can drop onto the TMS FNC blocks control. There is the navigator, which is a scaled down view of the blocks control, from where if the area where you drop blocks exceeds the area of the blocks control, with the navigator you can see the full range in a scaled down version and navigate this way. And finally, there is also the TMS FNC blocks toolbar, and this is a toolbar from where you can either open up the blocks selector to pick and control from, or to open up a pane from where you can change the attributes of blocks in your blocks control. If, in addition to TMS FNC blocks, you also have the TMS FNC UI pack installed, there are some additional controls available for you. These take advantage of the underlying toolbars and pickers drop-down controls that are in the TMS FNC UI pack, but these specific toolbars are designed for use in combination with TMS FNC blocks. So there is an edit toolbar to allow you to do clipboard operations, file, import, export, undo, redo, zoom, zoom in, zoom out, etc. There's a format block toolbar from where different formatting controls are available. There is a format block text toolbar to manipulate the text within blocks. And finally, there is a blocks select toolbar that is a toolbar from where you can pick any available blocks for dropping them into the FNC blocks control. Before we dive into the architecture of the blocks control, let's maybe first have a look at the IDE and have a look how these things all fit together. So first of all, we'll start with a VCL application. So this is a brand new VCL application, and from the tool palette you can see we have the blocks control. So this is the main control, and we will add, in addition to that, as you can see, I have these controls: the blocks edit toolbar, format tool, blocks toolbar, format block text toolbar, select toolbar. These are available as I have on my machine both FNC UI pack and FNC blocks installed. But we'll start with the controls that are available when you have just FNC blocks. So here is the FNC blocks toolbar, and maybe we can also already directly add the selector to the form like this, and make this a little bit smaller like this. What you can see is that all these controls are hooked together, and they are hooked together through, in the selector, the blocks control property, and it was automatically preset to the FNC blocks control that I dropped on the form. So the component is smart enough to pick up the blocks control when it is being dropped on the form. And the same applies to this selector, or this toolbar, excuse me. It also picked up the blocks control on the form. And when these are hooked up or linked, that means that any operation you do from the selector or from the toolbar will apply to the blocks control. So let's run this application. And so this is what you have available out of the box. Here in the toolbar or in the selector, you already have a wide range of all kinds of blocks that you can insert, that you can drop onto the blocks control. And here you have the toolbar from where you can also go into the selector and select many types of blocks that are registered and available. Then there is also here this pane from where you can manipulate all kinds of attributes of blocks. And finally, there is some settings pane from where you can perform clipboard operations, etc. All this available from the toolbar. But let's start and insert some blocks. So you can see that when I select the block, it is rendered in a different color. I can use the drag handles on the corners of these blocks. There's also a rotation control for each block. And notice that when you pick the rotation control, you can also change actually the rotation point. So this is all happening standard for any block that is dropped on the blocks control. And of course, there are link points. So here I have now connected these two blocks together. And so any link point can be connected to another link point. And as such, blocks are connected together. If I want to change some attributes, here is, for example, how I could insert some text into a block and at the same time change the color or change the color of the fill color of the block. This is all available from this toolbar control. Maybe let's also involve the navigator. I drop the navigator on the form, and let's put this navigator in the corner of our blocks control this way. Okay, here it is. It is up and running now, and I will insert a block. You can see a small version of this block that is now appearing in the navigator. When I make the area of the blocks control larger so that I get a scroll bar, you can see the red area in the navigator, which is the visible area of the blocks control. And as you can see with the mouse, I can select the view in my blocks control from the navigator. And of course, the red area in the navigator is in sync with the part that I visualize in the blocks control. Before moving on to the format toolbars, the various toolbars, let's also have a look how these things are actually exactly the same in a FireMonkey application. So now we are starting a FireMonkey application from scratch, like this. And so in my toolbar, I have exactly the same components. So everything I'm doing here, not only visually, but also from code perspective. So if I would add code, I can add exactly the same code in a FireMonkey application to work with our blocks control. Let's add the toolbar, and then maybe also the navigator. Box navigator. Okay. So now we have a FireMonkey application, and it will perform exactly the same way as it did for the VCL application. And that means, of course, that you can change the target of this FireMonkey application to also compile for the Mac, for Linux, for iOS, or for Android. So as you can see, I have the exact same behavior here in my FireMonkey application, like this. And that's not all. We can go a step further and also use these components to create a web client application, with TMS Web Core. So from my Delphi IDE, I have here installed TMS Web Core that allows me to create a web client application. And here is the form for the main form in my web client application. And as you can see, the exact same controls are available here. And I can do exactly the same, but this time in a web application. So let's add the selector so that I will have exactly the same possibilities, maybe also the navigator like this. They are always automatically hooked up when I drop it on the form. Also, the navigator is automatically set to the blocks control that it finds on the form. So let's run this web application. So this web core application, the Pascal code for it, is now being compiled to JavaScript. And it is this JavaScript application that runs from a browser. You can deploy the generated files, which is HTML files, some CSS, some JavaScript file. You can deploy that on any web server. And from there, your users can access this application as a web client application. I'm getting some error because there's a unit that was needed and missing by default, which was the core types, I believe. Let's see if that helps us solve this issue. It is now generating the web client application, and there is a debug web server that is included in TMS Web Core that is launched now. The browser starts on my monitor second screen. So let's this is the browser where this FNC box is now available. And as you can see, I have exactly the same behavior, but now in a web application. And I can, of course, also here connect these various blocks and do these kind of manipulations now all from the web browser. So this was a brief overview of the different targets. We won't touch today Lazarus. You can actually do the same from Lazarus, or you can also do the same from TMS Web Core for Visual Studio Code. But it is the same, just from a different IDE. What we will do now is involve the toolbars. The toolbars that are available when you also have FNC UiPack installed. And so this takes advantage of the toolbar and all the different toolbar picker controls that are available when you have FNC UiPack. So here you see the edit toolbar, the block format toolbar, then the text format toolbar, and then also the select toolbar from where you can select various types of blocks to insert these in the blocks control. This is a VCL application, so let's run it. And very important, there is here no code involved. So everything that this application already does for us involves no code at application level. Everything is done with just hooking up the components together. So here you can see our components selector, and I can select all kinds of block types. And let's maybe involve now here to the lines to interconnect them, but I can also do connections via arcs and manipulate it like that. And it becomes interesting that I now have this toolbar to, for example, change the color of the stroke or change the fill color of some block. All this is possible. This arc, for example, I can make it thicker and maybe change it to a dotted arc. So all these things are possible. There's also here something like a Bezier curve. So if you want to add Beziers to your diagram, that's also possible here with the handle to change the slope of these lines. All this is available out of the box. There's also a polygon, so you can draw your own polygons. So now I inserted a polygon. Let's make it a kind of weird shape. And I double click to finish. And now my polygon is ready. I can also change the fill color of this polygon like that. And it will behave just like the other blocks. It will do the exact same operations as the other blocks. Some other interesting feature that I want to show you here is that there is also a block type that can host an image. And so if we have selected this specific block type, here we can pick the image we want to insert in this block control. So let's open up here to pick an image. And I have, these are the different image types that are supported. And notice that also SVG images can be inserted. So I have some SVG images ready here for this example. And as we are close to Halloween, of course, my SVG images are Halloween themed. When I size the block and rotate the block, you can see that the SVG image still uses its original size, but I can of course let my SVG image stretch to the size of my block control. And the nice thing here is that everything is still razor sharp, as the SVG automatically renders the SVG image with a full, and that was not expected. This issue here, I'm not sure why I'm getting that problem. That was okay, not expected. Let's see. Notice that here the background is a solid background, and I can also make it transparent. So now the SVG is drawn with transparency. But if I want, for example, a gradient background, that is also possible. So all kinds of customizations in combination with that image control in a block. What I also have, for example, here is the controls to, if I select the block and okay, now I send it to back. So the control to move a control to the front or the back is also available from this toolbar. And these are buttons to make it rotate, for example, all directly available from the toolbar. If I click this block and press F2, now I can edit text in the block, and then I can start using, for example, the font picker. Let's pick whatever font here. I'm not sure, Sego, for example, and make it somewhat bigger to see the effect in bold, etc. I can also change the font color. So all these capabilities are available right out of the box without actually changing or adding any code at the application level. There's also automatic undo and redo. So all the changes that I did, I can undo. There's also zoom control here directly from this toolbar control. All of this you get without doing any coding. It is all available out of the box. So that is an introduction to what's available in the standard blocks controls, and also when you have the toolbars that come with the FNC UI pack. Let's now have a look at the architecture of the FNC blocks control. Within the FNC blocks control, the most important part here is that there is a collection of blocks elements. The blocks elements make up everything that is visualized in the blocks control. The blocks element class is an abstract base class for any type of element that is shown in the blocks control. And descending from that is the FNC blocks line, the line that connects multiple blocks. And this is also added to an array list of FNC blocks lines. And this is within the links array, while the other elements are in the elements array. So you can see here that this is all programmatically accessible via FNC blocks control.blocks.elements or FNC blocks control.blocks.links. You have also noticed that the blocks control has rulers, a vertical and a horizontal ruler. These are visible by default. Have some default settings on the divisors within this ruler, but you can also turn this off, or you can change the divisions on these rulers. This here is an overview of the properties that are available in the abstract FNC blocks element class. So you can notice here the angle of rotation, for example, the fill colors and fill type, the font for the text that is within a blocks element. There is different types of gradients. It can belong to a group or not. We'll cover that in a moment. There's also the notice of background elements, multiple layers that you can assign an element to. Link points are also important. This is the definition of where a block can be linked to other blocks. So we have seen that some of the blocks, for example, had on each corner of the block a link point. So 4 link points in total. Other blocks might have only 2 link points. A line, a TMS FNC blocks line, for example, that descends from TMS FNC blocks element, has typically 2 link points and on each side of the line. Restrictions, there is also the possibility to have restrictions. That means, can the block be sized, rotated, etc. These kind of restrictions can be applied to a block. For the border of a block, we have several properties to control the appearance with the stroke, stroke color, stroke width, and the stroke style. And there's also the possibility, optional, to have text in a block. So then you need the text property, text alignment, text color, and there are even multiple pieces of text possible within the block with an array of text cells. So if you need multiple parts of text on a block, also that is possible. If we have a look at the blocks line, as I said, this descends from the blocks element, and that introduces the line style, which can be a straight line or an arc line, a Bézier line. This is the kind of styles that you can apply to a line. And then the line has a source and a target. You can also specify if you want to have arrows at the source or the target of the line in the blocks line element. First part, you have seen that I did all the manipulations with the blocks control, with the selector, and inserting these all via the user interface. So note that everything you do via the user interface is also possible in a programmable way. So here is a code snippet that shows how you can create and insert and link with a line 2 blocks on the blocks control. So we'll create here the TMS FNC blocks linkable block. We create 2 instances of these. Well, maybe it is better that we just show this from the IDE, then we can highlight the code that is involved. So here I have this exact piece of code. So here we create the first block that is a linkable block. So it has 4 link points, and this is the position in the blocks control where I put this first linkable block. And then I add some default text within that block. And finally, I add the block to my blocks control in the array of blocks element with the blocks.add command. And then I simply create a second block that is a little bit more from the left with some text in it, and I add it to the blocks control. And finally, I create a blocks line that will connect these 2 blocks together. So I create a blocks line object, and I specify which block is sitting at the link point at the source of the line, and that is set via blocks line dot source link point dot anchor link, and that is set to a link point on my first blocks linkable block. Remember that there are, for the linkable block, 4 sides. Each side has a link point. So obviously I can access here link point number 3 and link point number 2 on the other block to connect these blocks together this way. And a link line and blocks line is also added to the blocks control with the blocks.add command. So when I execute this code, with this button, you can see that these 2 linked blocks are automatically or programmatically created. And as such, anything you do, you can programmatically create in this blocks control. You could, for example, use this to automatically generate UML diagrams for your code or database schemes for your databases. All this belongs to the possibilities of FNC blocks. Another important one is custom blocks. So you have seen that in the blocks selector, there are by default already a wide range of blocks pre-installed, that are available out of the box. But of course, you are not limited to these blocks that come with it. You can create your own custom blocks. And one possible way to do that is to create a class that descends from a blocks block and basically override 2 methods, the constructor and the get block path. The get block path method is an override from where you can specify the path that needs to be drawn for this block. In the constructor, you will see in a moment that we can do things like initialize color text, but also initialize link points on this block. So this is an example piece of code where some color and border color is preset, as well as font size, font color, etc. The size of this block is also preset, so it is 50 pixels larger than the default width for a block, and the height is somewhat smaller. You can also see here that I added the restriction that this block should not be resizable. So I added the CR no resize to this restrictions set. And here you can see that I add 2 link points to this block. So I clear the default link points for the blocks block and add 2 link points. Here it is important that I specify the position of the link point with respect to the original rectangle of the block. With the original rectangle, I mean this is the rectangle that the block has when it is being created. When I would resize the block afterwards, the link point will automatically move with the same distance as I would resize. But for creation, it is important that we use the original rectangle for determining the position of the link point. So you see that here, as this here second parameter, which is the Y position of the link point, is 0. So this will sit at the top of the block. And here you can see that the other link point is sitting at the bottom of the block. And the position, the horizontal position, is in the middle of the block. And I also have, just a second, let's go to the, not here yet, I'm going too fast. Here we have the get block path override. And so, as I explained, this get block path method, this is used to return the path that is used to draw the block. Note that get block path is a possible way to define the shape of a block. It is equally possible to override a paint method from where you can do custom painting of a block. But when just returning the path, you don't need to do anything specific for drawing. You simply return the path. And note also that if you do operations on the block, like setting the fill color, stroke color, this automatically applies to this path. So you do not need to do any effort for painting when using this technique. And let's now bring all the pieces of this puzzle together in the application that we created specifically for this webinar, which is an application from where you can automatically create and execute workflows. So let's go back to the Delphi IDE and open this application. This is the application that we prepared. And so what can we see here? We can see the blocks control. We can see the selector, some buttons here. We also see the navigator here. And here we have added some FNC image, and we will do some drawing on that image. If we go and have a look in the code, what you can see, or what is important to see here, is that, well, first of all, this application will register some custom blocks. So you can see here that we have a couple of custom blocks that will be created and registered. So we have a move forward, turn left, turn right, an end block, a scare block. So these are all custom blocks. If we go and have a look at, for example, the constructor, you can see here, as we just covered, the initialization of this block. And this is a block that also has 2 link points. If we have a look at the other blocks, the move block, for example, you can see here, it also has 2 link points. It's not resizable. and it uses a rounded rectangle. And if we have a look at the constructor of the form here, what is happening here is that we create a start block. So that's our custom block that we defined, and we add it to the blocks control. Another custom block is the move forward block, and then we have a custom line control that we add and link it up to on one side the start block, SB start block, and here the move forward block, the MB. And then we add another block, so 3 blocks in total, and hook also or link the move forward block together with the end block. Also, what I wanted to point at is the registration of the custom blocks. Here we have a register elements method, and in this method we register our custom blocks that we created for this sample application. We'll not yet cover, because that's not strictly within the scope of the blocks control, the little animation that will happen, but let's first have a look at the application when we run it. Then it will become clear what the purpose is, what is happening. So here it comes up and we have this application running. Okay, let's run it full screen like this. So these are the 3 blocks that were created. And I can, of course, these are the custom blocks that were registered and added. And here we have our run button. The run button will basically follow the path from start to end, and it will do the operations as it encounters along the workflow path, do these operations on a pumpkin that will move here in this area. So let's start this basic example. You can see the pumpkin arrives, it moves a little bit forward, and then it ends. If I want to change something, I can just insert a couple of other blocks like that, all different operations. And I just need to change the way things are linked a little bit, like this. So after first moving forward, I will add and turn right, then we move forward again, then we turn left and move forward till the end. And okay, I believe that everything is hooked up nicely again, and let's run this application. And you can see as it follows the workflow, it directs how the pumpkin moves here in this area of the screen. We also could load and save what we created here in this blocks control, save it to a file, and we also created a what more extensive workflow here that we are going to load. And here is the extensive workflow that was created previously. And of course, we can also execute it. Let's see what happens when it executes all these steps. Follow the pumpkin. And if you listened closely, you also heard that here we have this little block, which is the scare block, and the operation when it follows this block in the workflow is to play a sound that fits with the theme of this period, the Halloween theme. And let's maybe have a look at how the code will actually execute this workflow. And this piece of code is here. Everything is driven from a timer. So we start a timer, and on each timer tick, we will move forward in this workflow. So the first thing that happens is when the workflow has not started yet, there is no current block assigned. And so what we do is search within all blocks for the T start block type, and we will assign that to the current block. So that's determining the start of our workflow. If the start of the workflow was already found and we are already running the workflow, what we do then is follow the connections between the blocks, and we follow the connections via the link points, and via the link points we can determine the elements that are connected. Here, depending on the block type, because a start block has only one link point, the other blocks have an ingoing and an outgoing link point. And so here you can see that we we determine actually the link line that goes out of the current block. And when we have, and that is what we store in the ET variable. If we have found this blocks line element, what we do then is determine what other element is connected to this line. And as you can see here, we search within all the links that are available in the blocks control. Search for the link that matches the outgoing link of the current block where we are, and we then fetch on the target link point, we fetch the element that is attached to it, and that element will actually here, it will become the current block. So if this next element is effectively a block and not a line, and if it's assigned, of course, then this block will become the current block, the new block where we are. And then what we do here is, depending on the type of the block, we do the operation with the pumpkin to let it move forward or turn left, right, etc. And you can also see here that when we encounter in the workflow the scare block, that we execute the media player dot play to show this or to let this sound here. So this is how you can programmatically create but also execute workflows in FNC blocks control. The nice thing is that FNC blocks, of course, also runs with TMS Web Core as a web client application. And that means that we can have exactly the same code that we, in this case, will run in a web client. So what we have here is our same blocks control, the blocks selector, and here at the bottom, the FNC image where the pumpkin animation is shown. So everything is exactly the same. Let's run this application, and the result will be this exact same workflow creation and execution, but this time running from a browser in the web as such. So it's being compiled now to JavaScript to run from the browser. The browser is again shown on my other monitor, so I bring it up here in my monitor on the right. And so here you see the flow control application. So in the navigation panel, you see a small version of the workflow we have here. And maybe let's add some small variation to make it a little longer. Okay, let's stretch this, move it like this. Okay, and then let's change, oops, with the delete key, I can simply delete it a line when I edit it. Is this hooked up? This is hooked up, okay. And now we can connect these blocks together like this. And everything is hooked up correct. And so let's run this application. And you can see that it's exactly the same behavior, including the sound that it makes when it passes along the scare block. Actually, you can experience this right now also immediately from your machine. So if you visit this link, this is where we hosted this workflow application. If you visit this link, you can try it out from your machine and play with this web demo of FNC blocks. Some final tips and tricks that I wanted to share during this webinar is further programmatic control. So programmatic control of selection is of course also possible within FNC blocks, and you do this via the presenter. So we have on one side FNC blocks control.blocks that contains all the elements and lines. The presenter is the object that performs all operations on the blocks, what is in the blocks elements and lines. So from there, you can add elements to your set of selected elements. And of course, you can loop through selected elements and perform manipulations on all elements that are selected. Or you can simply also select all or unselect all. And I see that in the chat box, people ask for the link to this online demo of FNC blocks. And my colleague Gjalt already pasted that link, which is https://tmswebacademy.com/FNC blocks. That's all you need to start playing with this demo live from your browser. Nothing to install, just open up the link and play with it. Another item that I wanted to touch here under tips and tricks is grouping. Grouping of blocks of these basic block types is also possible to make from a set of different smaller blocks one kind of super block, and from that super block you can do the exact same manipulations as you would do with another block. I can quickly demonstrate that with an application that I created that does just that. And so all we actually need to do for creating a group is here we call presenter group selected blocks. So all the blocks that are selected at that point will be grouped into a blocks group, and you will see that all the manipulations will then apply to all elements in the group. So if I would drop, let's say, 3 controls on the blocks control, and now I select the tree, I create a group from it. So now you can see I can add other blocks. When I now click one of these 3 blocks, they will always behave together like a group. So they are sized together. When I rotate it, they are rotated as a group. So this is a mechanism to create a kind of super blocks out of smaller blocks in FNC blocks. Okay, and then obviously also important is saving or loading information to a file or from file. FNC blocks is using its custom file format. So all the settings of blocks on the blocks control can be saved to file and loaded again at a later time. It's also possible to save this to a stream and, for example, put this stream into a database blob if you prefer to persist your diagrams into a database. You can also export it as an image. So if you want to create a static image from what you see in the blocks control, save to image file or image stream is what you could do. Finally, there's also undo and redo functionality. So automatically the blocks control is keeping track of all changes and operations and automatically offers you undo and redo capabilities. And another item that I briefly showed in the beginning of this webinar is the Z-index control, where I did this from the toolbar, but also that is programmatically available with the presenter methods bring to front and send to back, either on individual blocks or on selected blocks in the block control. And that brings me to the end of the prepared content for this blocks control webinar. And this gives us some time for questions and answers. We'll have some time here. I also wanted to share with you the full source code of both the native application that I showed here today, with the workflow creation and execution, as well as the web application. So you have the full source code of these applications from this download link, and you can inspect the code, play with the code, modify the code to your wishes. And finally, also making you aware that we have currently a promotion action running for all FNC components. So again, FNC are components that you can use at the same time with one license in VCL applications, FireMonkey applications, WebCore applications, but also from the Lazarus IDE. And we had an action running up till October 31, where you have a 20% discount on each individual FNC product, and also a 30% discount on FNC Studio. FNC Studio that includes simply all our FNC components, to which actually today we have a new FNC product added in the FNC Studio, which is TMS FNC WebSocket, where you have a web server, WebSocket server, and WebSocket clients, both for native and web applications. So that was actually added today. And so if you take advantage of the discount on FNC Component Studio, you already have this brand new product also included. So I want to thank you for your attention. And if there are any remaining questions, I see that my colleague Gjalt already followed up questions in the chat box, where it was also asked where to download the sample. So that's from https://download.tmsfnc blocks webinar.zip. This is the source code from this application that we created specifically for today. If there are further questions, now is the time. So put these questions down in the chat box or in the question box as you want. And if there are no further questions, then of course I thank you very much for your time, your attention. I hope you found this webinar valuable view on our FNC blocks components that we updated in the month of September. We released a new version, and where further ongoing work is happening, working already towards the following version. And also very important to note is that if you are using FNC blocks and you have, while you work with it, further ideas for extra features, enhancements, feature requests, etc., then let us know. Of course, our team is listening to your needs. I see here a question. Are FNC components used in WebCore usable in responsive setting? That of course depends on what kind of responsive setting you understand. If, for example, you would add the FNC controls within a WebCore control like the responsive panel, and make it, for example, client aligned to an area in this responsive panel, then the dimensions of the FNC control will, of course, change according to the behavior of the responsive panel. So it will play along with the other WebCore controls that deal with responsive behavior. Okay, so far no further questions. Okay, then I think we can conclude this webinar here. Enjoy having a look at FNC blocks, and keep in touch and keep in communication for further releases. Thank you very much for your time. Until the next webinar, which will be together with Neil Jankowski, who will present also his tool that he created on top of FNC components. That's on November 15. Subscribe for this follow-up webinar. Also, if you have ideas for future webinars, if you want to see content covered here on TMS Web Academy, let us know. You know where to find us via email, support center, etc. Have a nice day. Enjoy the day. Until the next time. Bye-bye.